Yeah, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show is Candid Conversation 2. We have candid conversations periodically when we want to explore issues, questions, things that concern us, things that seem to be abounding in the atmosphere. We just like to examine some things from time to time. Today we're going to examine something that one of my guests, Hunter Adams, suggested that we examine. He didn't give it a category. He didn't give it a title. He just gave it a preface. So I'm going to introduce my guest, and then I'm coming back and I'm going to remind Hunter, to the extent that I can recall, what it was that he said to me that caused me to convene this August committee to discuss today's conversation, candid conversation. Hunter Haviland Adams III, I greet you.
Greetings. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad to see you smiling.
Oh, it's great to be here again with all my distinguished colleagues, and I hope we have deal with some things today that Tavis Smiley in his State of the Union missed. You know, there's a lot of important things that, and surely, you know, racial issues, how we fit in this country and how we're moving along, given the current political climate and stuff. You know, those are important, but there's a lot of things happening in the world, and one of the things that that did happen was the profound disaster earlier last year with the great wave known as a tsunami, or more technically, a soliton wave, to be more technical, but we don't
Spell
hear.
that.
S-O-L-I-T-O-N.
So we can go to the internet.
You can go on the internet, look up soliton/tsunami, and you'll find out that that's a special kind of wave. But anyway, the point was that it was profoundly disturbing for people everywhere as to assigning blame for this. You know, the article that was in the Chicago Tribune in February, which you have, talked about a theological debate that's taking place amongst Muslims, among Christians, among Buddhists, among traditional people. Was this disaster God's work, or was it fate, or was it karma, or did it just happen? And so it brought to bear some aspects, philosophical and metaphysical aspects of divine action that common people tend not to talk about. Although the Vatican, I have to bring this out, in a series of conferences in the 90s on science and divine action. And this one is Neuroscience and the Person, Scientific Perspectives on Divine Action, is that where does God fit into all of this? And one of the things that they concluded, and I want to share this with you, just a short passage, is that from disciplines as different as theology and biblical studies on the one hand, and basic research in the neurosciences on the other, and we can add also physics, comes a recognition that dualist, individualist, and cognitive view of the human person bequeathed by Western philosophy and theology needs revision. Now let me break that down for you, and my colleagues, they can elaborate. The point is that we're just one person, right? We're, you know, our bodies, our minds, our souls and spirits. We want to think of it as a unity, but in Western philosophy, it's a duality. Soul and body are separate things. And so the body is, it's nasty. You know, we can read, you know, in Paul's letters how he talks about the wretchedness of the body, that the soul and the spirit is what matters. But in essence, we're all one. And so the problem with the tsunami is that, well, where do people's souls go who were victimized by this disaster? Was it God's work? Did God do this? And why did God do it? Where was God? Why didn't he save people? And so this has created a theological schism amongst Buddhists, amongst Hindus, amongst Muslims, amongst Christians, amongst Jews, amongst traditional people, because our notions of divine action, and this is difficult, come from 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. And they were based upon the knowledge that we had of how the world works, how our brain minds work, what is nature, what controls the forces of the wind, the water, why do volcanoes blow, and so forth, why do earthquakes happen? And those were attributed to divine action, whether it was a series of different kinds of gods or forces. Even in the Yoruba tradition, still it's, people venerate forces of nature. So that's still with us. But the problem is, and this is what came out, is that our knowledge today has reduced what's called the explanatory gap between the workings of God, the divine, the creator, and the workings of nature. Right? Earthquakes happen, tsunamis happen, volcanoes happen, weather patterns happen. We're in a global warming period. It's happened over and over again. We forget the history of this planet. It's billions of years and stuff happens. The continents were at one time all one landmass. They've separated. Africa, Ethiopia is going to eventually be in the Indian Ocean. It happens. It has nothing to do with God's work unless you want to consider it in the overall grand scheme of things. And so it's touched off a debate, except for our people. Again, we out of the loop, and so we're here today to bring us in the loop.
Well, that was a wonderful opening statement, Counselor. And before we go any further, I just want to introduce the other two members of this august body. Dr. John Price.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And Josef Ben Levi.
Pleased to be here as always.
All right, and I'll just leave it up to one of you gentlemen to respond to some of all of what Hunter has just said.
Well, if I could just interject a little bit in what Hunter just said, I think that on part of we had a discussion, I think a few weeks ago, based upon a lot of the things that Hunter was saying about the so-called natural order of the Earth itself, where not the planets, excuse me, the continents go through their natural cycles, the weather go through its natural cycles, the Earth go through its natural cycles, where I think we had mentioned that the North Pole at one time, over every 200,000 years, becomes the South Pole, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we mentioned that these are just natural cycles that are going on, and we also brought into play possibly that, God may not even be interested in such things as this, This is thing of the, yes, right. This is a program, this is a program that is carrying on and has been going on and will continue to carry on. A natural program. If we call nature, whatever we call nature, nature is nothing but a program, you see. And this program will continue. And it is only due to the fact that we as human beings believe that we have what you call free will. That we have free will and we have this thing called ego, you see. What makes the bark of a tree more important than the inner part of the tree, you see? Only the thing that could be if the bark of the tree had an ego. It would see itself as more significant than the other part of the tree. The leaf would see itself more significant than the other part of the tree, only due to the fact that it has an ego. And so therefore, it would do all the analysis. It would wonder, it would look around, the leaf would look around and wonder, why is the tree bending? Maybe I should stop it from bending. Maybe I should do this. But that is only due to the fact that it is programmed, this ego is programmed into the so-called things of nature, which is natural, you know. And so therefore we feel that one thing is more significant than the other. And which in all truth, everything is part of this whole ecological universal system, you know, part of the program. What part of the program is more important than the other part of the program? We can't say, but we would like to say what part is more instrumental. And that's how I see it. And as Hunter was speaking about what is happening with religion today, the religion is making adjustments to properly keep up with the advent of education, advent of the intellect. Most people are learned people today. School is mandatory. 2,000 years ago, people were sheep herders and farmers. The majority, 99% of the people did not read nor write, you see. And so, and explaining the creation, explaining these esoteric phenomenons to the masses, use different terminologies, and sometimes we were very scarce on how they were explained. A lot of it was in superstitions. A lot of it was in culture, you see. But in truth, there were a group of individuals who've always been around. They may call them mystics, they call them masters, or whoever you want to call them. But they've always spoke of truth, and how they've always explained how this whole setup is. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. This whole setup is the same.
Absolutely.
And they spoke of what is called human consciousness. What is human consciousness? Well, they spoken of some spoke in very direct terms, some in very around the way terms. In many cases, they were not speaking to the masses. They never spoke to the masses, you see. They always spoke to those individuals who had an interest in this matter, you see. And they had a conversation, just as like right now, we're having a conversation among the four of us. But we have the millions of people who are listening in on us, you see. And some people are going to misinterpret everything that we say here, you see. But the same thing when these masters or when these mystics come. They spoke the truth. They spoke the scientific truth that has not changed over the aeons. They understood. They saw the universe as it was. They saw God in his proper perspectives, you see. In his proper perspective, not God in the sky by and by or somewhere in the universe, you see. They've always said this thing that we call God, this divine thing, this constructionist, this creator, this thing always existed within each and every individual.
That's absolutely right.
And it has to be brought to fruition. It has to be brought out of you. You have to put your attention onto it. But we all have that capacity, you see. So I'll stop right here.
You'll pause.
I'll pause.
All right.
But all these things are good, and thinking about everything that's being said, what comes to mind with me is from the standpoint of natural disasters. We can go back to the destruction of the explosion of Mount Vesuvius, the destruction of Pompeii, the blowing up of Thera. These things have happened and happened and happened over time, consistently and forever. But what has happened is that because of the lack of knowledge, I think, of people who are involved in theological studies or in the various faiths, they read a book like Revelations. And the first thing that they assume when they read a book like Revelations is that this is the thing that's supposed to happen, and this thing is supposed to happen now. Or they look at
It's a signal.
It's a sign, right? But what they fail to realize is that at the time that many of these people were writing, they were concerned fundamentally with what was happening to them right then at that
Right
moment.
then and there.
When Titus and Vespasian came in and destroyed the second temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD, their world was in their mind coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw the evil force that was out there against them as the Roman Empire. Now, the people want to take the analogy of the Roman Empire because for the Romans, because for the biblical writers, the Roman Empire was the second Babylon. That's why in Revelation they called it the Great Babylon, because the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. When the Romans came in and destroyed it, that was that second Babylon. So when they were writing Revelation, the analogy was being made about that, even though they didn't want to put Revelation in there to begin with. But when people today take that to suggest that the world is about to come to an end, even though in the original it never even says the world, we're talking about the end of an age.
Right.
And that's a particular period of time that has nothing to do with the world. All right, but that's something that always happened. The world is always, the ages are always changing. Like they talk about going from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, right? But most people don't understand that, because like Dr. Price said, there were always adepts and people who some people want to call mystics or whatever, who always taught an inner knowledge, a secret knowledge that was not for the general public. Only the initiates began to understand these things. And so all of these types of disasters, where they say, we're going to hear wars and rumors of wars, they've been fighting wars for how long?
I think they say that over 10,000, the last 10,000 years, there's been 100 years of peace in the world.
That's right.
And it's been sporadic.
And check it out. Most people have not tried to figure out in the time of their birth how many wars have been going on consistently right now.
Yes.
They say there'll be wars and rumors of wars. Well, this has been going on forever. There are going to be earthquakes in diverse places. I never forget back in the 70s, I used to keep track of earthquakes every year and how many earthquakes. And sure, in some cases, the earthquakes were increasing over the years and they would decrease. All of these things that people have projected, that they're saying that these things, that this generation, they says, will not pass, will not go into, all these things come to pass. Well, they fell to realize that, what generation are they talking about? They're talking about the generation that wrote that then. All right, and many generations have come about, and these things are still coming to pass, and they will continue to come to pass, because this is the nature of the earth.
Yes.
This is the way that the earth replenishes and cleans itself. Frankly, when it comes right down to whatever I think people consider the creator to be, that these things are the least of the concern of the creator. I think people they bother the creator with stupid things, and the consequence of that is that people will listen to folks who will tell them to sell all of their stuff. A classic example is the year 1999, before the year 2000 came in.
Y2K.
Y2K. People fail to realize, if they go back and look at the year 999, before the year 1000 came in, there was a perception that the world was going to all come to an end then. And they thought that God was going to usher it in then. But when the year 1000 showed up and God did not usher in the second coming, Jesus did not show up on people's doorsteps, then men decided to say, they made a decision that by the year 2000, they were going to make it come in. And of course, when the year 2000 rolled around, it didn't happen. But then people failed to realize again, what calendar are we talking about when those people were writing that in the calendar that they're using now? Two entirely different calendars. So people are really thrown off. And you had the people like the Millerites back at the turn of the century, back in the 17th century, rather than the 19th century, who this man William Miller came along, who was the founder of the Adventist movement, of course, out of which later grew the Jehovah's Witnesses and so forth and so on. He had a belief that the world was going to come to an end, that this dispensation would occur and the second coming would occur in the year 1843 or 44, when people sold all their stuff, moved up on mountains, and waited for the Christ to return. Mind you, a theoretical construct, not the historical Jesus, who if he existed, is already dead, been dead, didn't show up. So they revised it, and they've been revising and revising for years, and everybody tried to come up with these dates to try to figure it all out, and they're always wrong. And as I like to say, and I'll say this to your television audience, that I know for certain that God, if they believe in whatever their concept of God is notorious for making men out of liars. Consistently. So they need to stop that and try to deal with the reality that exists out here, because as long as they continue to think that they can figure out, here we're talking about the creator of the universe. The creator of the universe certainly is whatever, if we want to deal with mind, that's great, the greatest of mind. What would the great mind want to be concerned about with what we think about trying to figure out what's on the great mind? Because frankly, I figure if we figured out what was on the great, that's ego. Exactly. Right. If we figured out what was on the great man, we'd end up killing it anyway. That's how we do, because that's the nature of the Western mind. So the consequences of all this is that people have gotten really confused, and I know that in the things that I'm saying, when people see this, they're going to get angry at me. They always get angry at me, you know.
Yes.
But it's the truth. You know, I always will stand on the truth. That God is notorious for making men out of liars, and He has consistently made, or she has made men consistently liars from the very beginning. You know, even back then when they had the scroll from the Quran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, that they thought was this big battle between good and evil. It was the people who in the scroll, in the Quran community, they were ready to prepare themselves to fight against the Romans, who were the sons of darkness that they were fighting up against. So this is how they would look at the thing. They, you know, there was no space. You know, they had a belief, some of them, that a legion of angels was going to roll down on the Romans. And when the Romans showed up, guess what? Killed every last one of them.
Didn't happen.
No angels didn't show up.
Didn't happen.
Didn't show up. Didn't happen. So, you know, there's a real phenomena that's occurring out here when people fail to realize that what we're looking at, and as Dr. Price and us, we were talking about earlier, even many ministers, like he said, are speaking about spirituality now. Now what's up? Now what's up with that? Now why are they all talking spirituality now all of a sudden? At first it was all about, you know, that if you do, like that man who killed those people up in Wisconsin. That man was talking about the end of the world. They need to get their money together and save up and do this and do that. People are losing their minds over stuff like that. People need to be realistic.
He lost his, didn't he?
He lost his. They need to be realistic. That's not what it's all about. You know, or people figure that they're going to be swept up one day in what they call the rapture, right? I took a moment to go and look at that and look up my Greek in that, see, because I know that it doesn't say rapture I know that says in English, but in the Greek, I looked up the word, it's called, the word is, the actual sentence in there, it says, arpagnometha. Arpagnometha comes from the word arpagmos, which means to plunder and to spoil, to violently take away. So, you know, if I'm gonna be violently taken away, I don't know if I want to be a part of something like that.
Swept up in that.
All right, swept up in that. I'm not so certain that I want that to happen, and nor does it say that that's how it's going to occur. It's like when they talk about people speaking in tongues, and what it really says when you read in the original is that everybody spoke in their own tongue.
Right.
Not in no special tongue. So all of these things are, and they're just simple things that people can explore and investigate. But until I think that people realize that, as the Gnostics said in the Gospel of Thomas.
Right.
In the Gospel of Thomas, it says, they asked him, where can we find the kingdom of heaven? He said, if you look for the kingdom of heaven in the sky, the birds of the sky will get there before you do. So much for the heavenly Jerusalem. If you look for the kingdom of God on the ground, and the creeping things of the ground will get there before you do.
Right.
If you look for the kingdom of heaven in the sea, then the fish of the sea will get there before you do. But if you want the kingdom of heaven, you must look for the kingdom of heaven within yourself. Right? Split a rock and you'll find it there. All right? It's just that simple. That until they recognize the spirit in themselves, or what, for lack of a better term right now, without getting into a lot of other deep linguistic stuff, if they want to find God, they need to find the God that's in themselves. They always talk about the body being the temple of the Lord. Well, what do we think they're talking about? But then that's dealing with some talk that we would describe as esoteric. Because people can't imagine. They think of the temple as a building somewhere. Yes. Well, even back in those days, the people didn't hang out in the temple. The only person who could go into the holies of the temple was the high priest.
Yes. The high priest.
You know, they think of in order to get saved, I got to go to the church, some building somewhere. We churching right now. We ecclesiaing right now. This is an ecclesia. That's what we doing right. We churching right now, church. That's church. We churching right now.
Amen to that.
Amen,
okay. So, you know, and I think that goes along with what Hunter is saying, and people fail to realize that the Mother Church is having a big discussion on this.
That's right.
A big discussion is going on now. They're confused. Not that they weren't always confused. We go back to Eusebius and people like that, the early church writers. They always do that.
I like to interject, but organized religion basically is a marketing program.
Absolutely.
You must understand what it is. It's a marketing program, and just like any product that you're selling, you got to always be ahead of the
curve.
Yeah, the curve. You got to be ahead of the curve. You got to get ahead of your market. No different than Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. I think what is it? Coca-Cola got, I've been putting lime in my Coke for the longest, Now they got Coca-Cola with lime. You see? I mean, this is what they do. This is the fact of it. They're trying to get ahead of the curve. The people are moving it. The evangelists now, they're using the term spirituality because something is happening in the consciousness of human beings, of the people in the West. And so to be ahead of this, they have to start using terminology, but they're far away from what you call spirituality. But there are people who are interested in spirituality because they have not found what they're looking for in religiosity, you see. And so therefore, the head of these churches are now speaking in the terms of the mystics. They're using these terms, but they don't understand it themselves.
Never had the experience.
They haven't had the experience. And so they have to keep their flock or their market in place. You see, they have to have their market shares. So they're using these new terminologies. But what happened is that, I must tell you, it is said that if you keep lying to yourself, if you keep on lying, what happens? You start believing it. And after a while, you have to really start pursuing spirituality. You see, you force supply and demand. It will be demanded that you have some spirituality after a while. So I say, well, if this is what you want to do, you want to pretend like you know spirituality, keep doing it. Pretend sometimes turns into reality. You see.
But they won't get there with rock and rap music as a means of trying to bring young people into that, because that clouds what you can't become spiritual just by doing gospelized rap and rock music. I'm sorry. There's traditions, and that's not part of the tradition. That young people have to understand is that if you want to really get within yourself, you can't get to that just in the vernacular of a particular genre of music. There are specific kinds of music that evoke out of you that natural capacity within you for spirituality. Rock and rap music cannot do that. In fact, it will make it go further enclosed, so it become more and more difficult to come out. It's the antithesis of true, real spiritual music. And that's not being taught. They're trying to bring in young people by letting them do rock and rap to get them in the church, to keep the population going, to keep the congregation going for the next generation.
Yes.
But that's not going to develop young people spiritually, and that's what truly they want. And they're being deluded into believing that this is going to get them there, and it's not. It's a lie.
Yeah, this is like, reminds me of Martin Luther. And for those who don't know, I'm not talking about Martin Luther King. I'm talking about Martin Luther, who was the head of the Protestant movement.
Right.
As I like to point out to people, if you're not a Catholic, you're some kind of Protestant if you are a Christian. I don't care if you're an Apostolic, or Pentecostal, or Presbyterian, Episcopalian, you're a Protestant. And Martin Luther, one of the things that he argued for was that the church was the evil beast on the earth, and that the Pope was the Antichrist. Right? No people thinking that the Antichrist was going to come somewhere out here, but Martin Luther was arguing that the Pope was the Antichrist. They had everything screwed up in the church. They were misleading the people, and the church has always been, and not only the church, I would say not the church, but organized religion has always been a political means of trying to enrapture people into something that would be financially beneficial to the College of the Cardinals or to some other heads of groups. And this is why we have, and granted, we have some people out here who do exceptionally well, and I meet people out here all the day who call themselves evangelists this and apostle that, but what are the people? What are their situations? And then what are they teaching the people? They're teaching the people that they must, if you believe, then you shall be saved. If you believe. It didn't say if you know. It's a big difference between having gnosis and having pistis. See, pistis is belief. That's faith. And I always tell people, do you just go and date somebody purely on faith, or do you try to get to know them? You try to get to know them. You try to know them. You try to have gnosis. You don't go strictly on faith or just on belief in that thing, because you can believe a lie, and as Dr. Price said, after a while, you might eventually, after you keep believing those false things, you may even actually get around to something that is called true spirituality. But first, the person has to step back and realize that that's in here. That spirituality is here. You know, it's not out. Nobody can give it to you. You can't go and sit in a sermon, in a service for 2 hours on a Sunday, of which you're only going to get 20 minutes of preaching, most of which is going to be off of 2 verses, unrelated to anything that particular verse might be talking about. They're going to talk about the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky, but they're not going to tell you anything about what that verse is really relating to. And the consequence of that is people come out of there feeling good, but never spiritualized.
Right.
But they got a good feeling. And guess what? They've given up some free money. It's like going to the gentleman's club. The only difference is that you got the preacher in front of you. You still get up your money for free for a good show.
Yes, that's very revealing, quite revealing, that most of the people are, you know, faith and belief is an easy sell. It's a very easy sell, because if you can believe that you're going to that all you have to do is believe and it will happen, I mean, that's a great sell. You know, that's a con. That's a great con there. You know, and this has been the state of organized religion for so many hundreds of years, because the people were not willing to do their own research, to do their own work, you see. And then another thing is that, especially in the West, there has not been in the West those enlightened ones who have come to preach the gospel of spirituality, of truth. It was not of that caliber, you see. This is early development here. The West is very, very new.
Infant.
Very infant.
Very
you
infant.
see, very infant.
Yes.
And we go back 2,000, what is 2,000 years in terms of this earth?
No time.
It's no time whatsoever. And Western thought emphasizes no further than what the Greeks, you see, what the Greeks brought in. Well, what did the Greeks get theirs? You see, we have to go beyond that and beyond that. But the point of the matter is that a great master once said that spirituality is coming to the West. Before, we had to go to the East to seek spirituality, because the great saints rose up out of the East, migrating from Africa, Middle East to China, Tibet, India. Now it's coming to the West. Why? China is becoming the biggest capitalistic powerhouse in the West. I mean, in the East, such as with India. They are seeking materiality. We who in the West have had materiality and have seen the limitations of materiality. We got 4 cars, we got 2 houses, we got everything that materiality. We consume 25-30% of the world's resources and represent only maybe about 10% of the world's population. You see? And so we have found the limitations of materiality here, and we are hungering for something else. And we call this hungering for something else, the seeking of spirituality. We have the most churches, we have the most synagogues, we have the most temples, and we're still thirsty and we're still hungry, you see. We're clapping our hands on Sunday, we're singing, we're rapping, we're doing dances, we're doing everything, and we still are hungry, you see. The gospel industry itself, you know, is a multi-billion-dollar industry, singing songs and all of this, and still people are still hungry.
Right.
We're eating ourselves in the church basements. We're eating too many ham hocks, too much chicken, too much beef, and we're killing ourselves with obesity in this country, you see. It has not satisfied us. So we need something else to fill us. And that thing can only fill us because it is the grasping, the soul is crying out. The spirit of humanity is crying out here that it must have something to eat. And the only thing that spirituality eats is truth, which is love. Truth and love, one goes with the other. Once you seek truth, you'll find love. You see.
And that's like, and that goes back to there's a statement in the scripture that there will be a famine in the land. The famine won't be for food or water, but it'll be for the hearing of the word of the Lord. Now, it's apparent that the famine is still going on.
Yes.
So people have obviously not heard whatever it is they think they were supposed to hear relative to the hearing of the word of the Lord. Now, there are people out there who think they got it, and there's some people who actually do have it. But overwhelmingly, people are not willing to do the hard intellectual work that is required to acquire that knowledge. Like, why is it that Pythagoras, who is considered the father of geometry, even though the Great Pyramids, some of the greatest geometrical shapes in the world, were already ancient when he got to Greece, why would he sit around for 20-something odd years just to have the opportunity to go to school to learn these things? Now that's desire for truth and knowledge. And yet we have situations today where we got young men who figure if I, to learn to read and write or be smart is something they call acting white, whatever that is. I have yet to figure that out. That is some of the most, backwards thinking I've ever heard. How is it possible that being intelligent among African people is acting white when in fact we are the authors of knowledge? So there's something wrong with the way the thinking has come about in this.
Yes.
In this world, this society. If we are therefore the authors of this now, we are therefore also the authors of the notion of spirituality and what it's all about. Before the European church had it together, the African church, like with the Gnostics and so forth in the early, they had a whole different view of how this thing was supposed to be done. And then the Europeans got a hold of it, kicked them all, basically because of what Constantine is saying. I had one of my students ask me about Constantine. Who is Constantine? I went to a whole thing about
Not
Constantine.
the movie.
Yeah, about the movie. Instead of realizing that there was a real Constantine and the impact, and here was a man who did not accept Christianity until he was on his deathbed. And all the while that he had allowed Christianity to be acceptable in the empire, he was doing some of the most vicious, cruel, unchristian things anybody could ever think of in history. And he did those things and didn't feel bad about it. And he got the bishops, who are some of the most popular people we know, like Irenaeus, the Bishop of Lyon, and Eusebius, who wrote the church history, to go ahead and agree. Because Eusebius, when he came to the book of Revelation, Eusebius said, hey, the Roman Empire can't be evil because we are part of the Roman Empire, and Constantine is the head of the Holy Roman Empire, so they couldn't be talking about that. So he reversed the whole thinking on that. But why? It was a political move, not a truth move, not a historical move, not a fact move. It was a move he made because it was politically expedient for him to say that. And again, it takes us back to what you were talking about organized religion. And it's politicizing. It's basically a political thing. I mean, the people on December 25th, which they say is the birth of Jesus Christ, and I always tell people, where's that in the scripture? And they can't show it to me. I say, well, what are they doing, with the birth of Jesus? Or what does Easter is coming up real soon? What do bunnies and
rabbits don't lay eggs either
have to do with Easter? And if people would study that, they would find out it has absolutely nothing, but they could go back and see how it's very important, since these were customs of the peoples of those times, folk customs, that in order to bring them into the church, they had to incorporate some of them things, like we talked about with the Celts and the Celtic cross and stuff.
Yes.
They had to incorporate some of that. That was a political move.
Yes.
They didn't care anything about the spirituality of the people. That meant that if they brought them in, they could get more taxes, more revenue among Islam in Africa. When it was said that if you became a Muslim, you did not have to pay the poll tax. So a lot of Africans converted to Islam, and they said, whoa, it's okay for y'all to become Muslims, but y'all still got to pay taxes. All right, so the rules seem to always change when it comes to us.
Yes.
When it comes to us, the rules always get changed all of a sudden when we want to do this thing. And it's still changing. Now the president got faith-based.
Oh my goodness.
Educate. Well, I know we probably don't want to.
No, we can go
all
there.
Right. Because
I think that's interesting.
Faith-based initiatives, and when they've already made it real clear that the faith-based initiative is another way for the government to co-opt our so-called religious leaders to buy them out. Again, the political movement.
Yes.
And what are they doing? Then they're trying to get them hooked up with the white evangelical Christians. They even got what they call white evangelical Christian music. I thought it was called gospel. Now it's called something else. Or they've got these white evangelical Christians. You mean tell me that, you know, black apostolics and Pentecostals and people I like to refer to as holy rollers, they're not evangelicals too? So all of a sudden now the rules are changing. And people fail to realize, I thought they were all Christians together. And I thought that they all were supposed to be worshiping the same so-called Christ. But there's a difference, apparently. But that difference has existed for a while, and they're doing it all over again. So exactly what's going on here? What, you know, if people will go back and study and get real knowledge, then in most cases, I feel that if they really got real knowledge, in most cases, most ministers would be sitting up in church pretty much by themselves on Sunday.
Absolutely. Religion in this country and throughout the world is basically bankrupt. It has nothing to do with spirituality whatsoever. It's just like Mr. Levy is saying here, you know, this it's just been political. Religion has been the second arm of politicism, politics. The Bush administration has got this, what he called the faith-based initiative. The mayor's got this going on now in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
He has it last summer with all the ministers here in the city of Chicago. And he's co-opting all of these ministers, you know, so that he maintained his power and control. I mean, it's nothing new. You see, it's nothing new, as just he explained historically.
And isn't it amazing that
Constantine started a lot of this?
That's a lot of it,
you know,
did.
with the use of the cross. The cross meant for to conquer. You see, they used the cross as a symbol. They couldn't get the people to fight at one time, you know, to go on the crusades to fight in the Holy Land. So what Constantine did, he put the symbol of the cross on the shields. You see, and he used it as a symbol of conquest. The Muslims are reacting to that today. I said that these Americans invading us. These Westerners, they're crusaders.
Yes, sir.
This is what he said.
Exactly
They're referring
right.
back to crusades.
Yes, sir. We got to know your history.
So religion has always been used as a methodology of conquering the people. And they've used very dastardly means to do that. Death, suffering. But we don't like to hear that. They don't teach that on Sunday morning in the church. They don't teach that. The popes had standing armies.
Sure.
Standing armies. They had an army waiting. You know, a pope with a standing army. You see. But this is the state of religion. And I remember that I was listening to this program. I think it was the 500 Club, 700 Club. Yeah, 700. The head of the 700 Club said it was okay to torture people if they had knowledge. If they had knowledge of a bomb or something of that sort, he said it was okay to torture. This is a religious man. You see? Well, I stated quite, it's a religious man. It has nothing to do with spirituality. Jesus never spoke about torture.
Sure.
He never spoke about conquest and conquering. And this has been the state of religion, but we leave it out. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about the 100,000 witches that were massacred and burned at the stake
In Massachusetts.
in Massachusetts, in Salem. You know, what is a witch?
Right, exactly.
I mean, what is a witch? A witch is a fairy tale.
Right.
But these people actually believed there was such thing as witches. They were very prominent in their lives, these witches. And people who they didn't like. If they wanted to steal their land, they called them a witch.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they
Now
took the
that
land.
spread to Africa.
That's right.
see?
Take their woman too. Call her.
Yes, you see. But it has always been used as a methodology of politics
Absolutely.
and greed. You see. So if one wants to really, really find the truth, one has to go within. And if you're much luckier than that, you're lucky to find someone who has achieved it. Who has achieved true spirituality, then that can be an asset to one's quest for this thirst that is coming up in the land today.
So it kind of comes back to the fact that it's not God's hand in the tsunami. It's not God's hand in Mount St. Helens. It's not God's hand in the rains that Portland and Washington should have got, that Los Angeles has gotten, creating floods and people's. No one said, well, where was God in that? We didn't hear that, did we, in the news? Because they knew that God had nothing to do with that. That this is a vast vast universe out here, that the Hubble telescope has shown galaxies colliding. Now, if galaxies are colliding, there has to be planets in the stars and the galaxies, right?
Yes.
And that means that there's more than likely life there. That life was obliterated, and we're looking backwards in time billions of years ago. So that life never came into fruition. So are you going to blame God for galaxies colliding? It says that we have to really look at ourselves. And one of the last things that Siddhartha Gautama said, or the Buddha said, as he was dying, he told his people to work out your own salvation. Don't believe me. Check it out for yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Check it out for yourself. And so we have to really work on ourselves. You can go to church, a mosque, or temple, what have you, synagogue. But ultimately, the ultimate responsibility rests with us.
Yes.
Each of us individually. And that's difficult because in this society, we have not been socialized towards that end.
No.
We've been socialized away from that and put our faith and belief in institutions and other people. But we fail to remember that when we came into existence, came out of our mother's wombs, did we have a belief then? We had no beliefs, right, Dr. Peace? We didn't have a belief then. Every single belief that we have, we learned. We learned from somebody. And it became associated with other things such that it got embedded within our whole beings, and we accept it unquestioningly. We haven't inspected it, put it in our hands, and try to see, well, where did this belief come from? What is it connected with? To see where it came from. Is it true? Is it really real? How can I verify this for myself? That I don't have to trust another outside authority. I did a lecture at the Peggy Notabard Science Museum up near Lincoln Park Zoo several years ago when they had an exhibit called A Question of Truth. And I talked about 7 ways people use to find the truth. And one of them is through authority. I'm not going to go through all the rest of them. It's through authority, that because Dr. So-and-so said this, or because Reverend so-and-so said this, or because Representative so-and-so said this, it must be true. But they haven't tried to verify it themselves. You can't trust the media because now the media will give you the same story. 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, 32, you know, and then you got Fox, you know, fair and balanced, some say. They say, you know, I don't think it's fair and balanced, but we won't go there today. But you have to find it out yourself, and that's work. And most people are so frustrated, they're overwhelmed with just day-to-day living, they don't have time and don't take the time. Got children. It's difficult today.
Very difficult.
It's very difficult today to be a seeker of truth. It's very, very difficult. But you have to say this, is that if I don't seek it, what are the consequences? That is it going to cost me more to rely on someone else's version of the truth they say than if I try to find it out myself?
True.
And I, for one, I'm following the footsteps of my father and mother, is to seek truth. I mean, that was one thing my father told me, was to seek truth. He read to me Plato and Kant, you know, when I was growing up. You know, I don't know how many people have had that experience, but we would debate with his friends issues in the Bible, as we're talking about today. And that's how I learned, through him. I was very grateful to him for that experience, and my mother as well. And so, I mean, that helped shape me to be a seeker of truth myself, for myself, to learn for myself. And so that's the challenge. And there's a lot of vehicles. Professor Ben Levi talked about the Gospel of Thomas. There's a wonderful movie, even though it's a bit, you know, hokey in a sense,
Right.
but Stigmata,
Yeah.
is a wonderful film to talk about the politics of the Gospel of Thomas.
Right. And the church.
And why they have to keep that secret.
Yeah.
Well, not secret, but separate and discredited. Because, I mean, we have to look at, there was many different Christianities.
Sure was.
During that time period. There wasn't just one Christianity.
Right.
There was a number of different competing sects at that time that each of them had their own ideas
Right.
of what the teachings were. It's a shame that none of them went back to Egypt to learn what Jesus learned when he spent his 20 years in Egypt.
Oh, you talking about the lost years of Jesus? Nobody
Right.
knows
You
about
know,
that.
we don't even hear about that.
Right.
Yeah.
But we got examples of what the study would have consisted of.
Sure.
You know, for someone who wanted to be a master. There's examples of that they can go and check out. I'm grateful for the late Professor John G. Jackson, for giving us a lecture on initiation in ancient Kemet. Right, so you can learn what he studied. You know, you just can't come back to a population and say, yo, I'm here. You know, check this out. You know, they want to know what you bringing to the table because they already had priests, correct?
Right.
You know, they already had priests. They already had folks who studied intensely. So what are you bringing to the table that we don't know? You know, there's a debate now, a new book about why the Jews rejected Jesus. We need to see what was the reasons. And it wasn't the reasons most people think.
Yes.
You know, he was rejecting the oral history, the Talmud. He's saying that I'm bringing something new, that y'all need to revise this oral history. You know, so we have to really get into this study ourselves, form study groups, find a book, not just the popular things that we see out here, not the Left Behind series, because you will be left behind.
And again, look at the
You
Left
know
Behind
what?
series.
You know what? I don't want to do this. I keep looking at cues. I'm obliged to tell you we got a minute, so go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna say this real quick. The Left Behind series is a good example. This is novelization of a story that they made into a novel that people read as if it were a gospel,
Right.
as if it were the truth. You know, the whole concept of being left behind, that some people got took off in the rapture and you still here. You know,
And the Da Vinci
everybody's
Code.
going. And the Da Vinci Code, they just had a thing where the church just came out and said, Catholics don't buy the Da Vinci Code and angels and demons. Don't buy that. And it was just funny because my mother sent me an email and said, son, did you get the Da Vinci Code? Have you seen angels and demons? You know how I like to debate. Get it, read it, and let's talk. But that's what we used to do. That's how I kind of honed some of my skills, because she used to make me, nope, you're wrong, go back. Study some more.
And another thing that we have to take in consideration is the Holy Bible itself, the so-called Holy Bible,
Yes.
King James Version. I mean, it actually tells you. This is one thing about the King James Version that I think is ironic, is it says this is the King James Version, which is the version by a monarch, a potentate. And it says according to Luke, according to John, according to St. Matthew's. It's not that Matthew wrote this or John wrote this.
Right.
This is according to somebody heard what they heard. 300 years later, 30 years later. My goodness. This tells you, but people said, no, this is the gospel and it is God's word.
Verbatim.
Well, everything is God's word. If that's the case, you know, the Sun Times, that's God's word. You know, the Tribune, you know. But
May I invite you gentlemen back, please?
Sure. Sure.
Well, I'm fascinated. I can't speak. I can't praise you enough. I have so thoroughly enjoyed you. If you would just promise to come back.
Sure, we will.
And I will not interrupt you. I will just sit here at your feet.
No, you can interrupt us.
I'm just enthralled.
Just let us know
I'm
when the
so
time
happy.
is up.
I just love it.
well, I enjoyed myself
Yeah,
because
I
I don't
did.
have to say anything. Actually, I'm just adding minutia to it, you know. These gentlemen here on the side.
Oh, this was good.